The world around us is hostile to the Word of God and to biblical values, but we are called to be salt and light, to stand for truth in a decaying culture. We are not called to run from the fire, but be willing to step into the fire. God has placed you at this time in history on purpose and for a purpose. Join us as we get better equipped to address civics and culture from a biblical worldview. Welcome to Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church. Let's welcome our hosts, Debi and Sam.
Today's topic is the fight for school choice. This will be a solo episode, so Sam and I are just going to have a conversation about this. There's been some crazy stuff happening, right?
Yes, in our state and just all the attacks on school choice going on. And I feel like it's not talked about a lot. And many people don't know that Arizona is one of the pioneers for school choice, and the laws that we have, tax credits that we're able to get at the state level. And so I do really think it's an important topic to talk about.
And even like this week, I saw something on Libs of TikTok over Arizona school. It was like, what is happening?
I'm like, I really hope people don't take this as truth.
Well, no, a lot of times they do expose some really good things, but I saw this, I was like, what is happening? So, it's just been something, but it's kind of predictable. We'll go into this more, but every time there's about to be an election year, there's some major thing that they try to, like, did you know there's this crazy thing that's happening that's not a real problem? But
yes.
So it's trying to put out make a fire where there's no fire,
Right.
Predictably, because there's an election year coming up in Arizona that's going to go more under the radar because it's not a presidential election, it's a state level election. And so they're kind of priming the gears, I think, in a lot of ways. It happens every single time.
And starting the spread of the misinformation.
Exactly. Trying to make everybody panic.
Yes.
And talk about, again. So I think it is good to talk about this.
Yes. So ESAs, let's dive into a little bit about the history of ESAs and what they are, because a long time ago, and I'm saying a long time ago, that's really...
As a 20-something-year-old.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Got it.
Can you explain to us, Debbie, the difference between what a voucher was and how that's different from what an ESA is?
Yeah. So let me see if I can find... I had a little tab there. But one of the things... Because people use these terms sort of interchangeably, and which is a little frustrating for me personally, because it's not a voucher. We'd have had vouchers in the past, but the difference between a voucher, because we were one of the pioneer states for even the vouchers, right, when they came up. Yep. But a voucher is more of a this is before ESA school choice options included vouchers, which were government-funded scholarships for private school tuition. These were often challenged in court, because they were like a limited number of students. So it's basically like almost like a coupon, and you take it and you get part of this money off of like tuition somewhere. That's not really but it's kind of like that model where you have something that's for a very specific use. It's for tuition. At a private school. It was usually very limited in either it was special needs students or under a certain income level that they were available. Those, anytime we've pioneered anything, they immediately get attacked in the courts and they try to overthrow things. And so that model didn't work real well. It's holding up in the courts. And so then we ended up being that the Empowerment Scholarship, I think is what it stands for. Arizona Empowerment Scholarship Account is what it stands for. I always say ESA. I don't think about the words that are involved in it. Okay. But it's an Empowerment Scholarship Account that started off, and we were an early school choice state. We were an early voucher state, and then those got changed. We were an early tax tuition credit state, which we can talk about in a minute, and then the ESAs. So they initially started in 2011, and it was very limited. So it was kind of a trial run. We were the first state to do it. And it allowed students to, because basically what happens in education is that the money follows the student. So certain money is allocated for students. Some of it's federal, but a lot of it is state level money, and they get a certain amount of money that the student, whatever school that student goes to, it follows them. Special needs students have additional money because it's more expensive and they have more needs, right? More educational needs. But those things follow the student. And so the ESA was taking part of that money and allowing parents to choose what to do with it to have the education that they wanted for their child. So back at this time, now the money per student is like, for public education is like $15,000. Just a couple years ago, it was at $13,000.
So this is the money that would follow the student at their school. It's
correct.
Like $15,000.
Yes.
Yeah.
And which, there's all these cries of how we're underfunded, all of these different things, but the money for education has actually gone up in the last several years in Arizona. Because what used to be $13,000, now it's about $15,000 per student, and it follows the student around. Go ahead.
Sorry, just a side note: the way education funds are allocated, where the money line item is, that's where it has to be spent. So if this $15,000 is for the student, like following it around, it's not used for like maintenance at the school or something else, right? Like that money is for the student.
Yeah, education money, it tends to, and I don't know, I'm not familiar. I don't know of another thing where it's so very specifically allocated, where it's like this money has to go toward buildings and this money has to go toward this thing. And like we used to, side note before we get back to this, but I remember when I was, I used to be a public school teacher, and it would be like, oh, we have, at the end of the school year, because I was in a Title I school, and at the end of the school year, they would come around and they'd be like, well, we have all this money left over that we've got to spend. Do you need anything, like any big furniture items or things that, because they had money left over and they had to spend it so that it looked like we needed it, so that we kept getting it, but nobody had used it.
Right.
And we're like finding things to spend it on, And this was 30 years ago. So it's only gotten worse.
Right.
I imagine it's only gotten worse. But where it's like, okay, that money can't be moved into a different pocket. It's got to be used in that one area, right?
Yep.
So with ESAs, like I said, it's about $15,000 now. It was less than that when this first started. Students get about $6,000 that they can get in ESA money. So it's not even half of that money that they can take and use for whatever they need to use it on for education. So this could be private tutors. This could be special, equipment or things that students need if they have special needs. It could be a private school. It could be homeschool curricula. It could be, there's a variety of things that it can be spent on. That's where it's more broad, which is why it's that empowerment scholarship. It's different from a voucher because it can be used in a broader way. It can be used for tuition, but it can also be used for supplies or equipment or other educational needs, depending on what the need of the child is. And it gives the parent the flexibility to be able to provide the best education for their child.
Yes, which is I also want to emphasize that point of why all of this is so important, right? Is because we're talking about what's best for the student, and the state doesn't always know what's best for the student, right? You're the parent.
Yeah.
So can you get into that a little bit?
Well, and we even talked about this recently on another episode about the professionals, right? And so, this was something I homeschooled. You were homeschooled. We had, there's so many amazing people that we know that, Allison was homeschooled. Allison, who's on here, she was homeschooled. I homeschooled my kids. So there's a lot of really amazing young people walking around that have been homeschooled, right? That it's a very, that choice, their parents were able to use that to give their kids obviously a great education, right? But we're trained to think that this was the internal dialogue that I had when I was deciding, because I was a teacher. I had a master's degree in education. I had taught in public school. I come from a family of teachers. I have a whole bunch of people that are teachers. And I had my first child, and she was getting ready to go into kindergarten. And I'm like, I am being told that I am supposed to. I've been training this little girl and loving her and teaching her all these things, and I'm just supposed to hand her over to strangers and say, good luck. Like, there you go.
Have fun.
And I'm like,
see you in 8 hours.
I'm thinking, why is that what we're expected to do and we're not supposed to question that? It's like, There are people, and that, not to say, because homeschooling is not for everybody, right? There are a whole lot of situations where people either don't have the income or they're single parent or whatever. And
Right.
I was a public school teacher. I know a lot of amazing public school teachers. So it's not that teachers are bad or anything else.
Right.
The point is, it's that decision making that you don't have any other choice but to, it's like if you decide that that is what is best for your family, that sending them to public school or sending them to private school or homeschooling them or whatever you decide makes the most sense for your family and that child in that situation, that's what you should be able to do. And it shouldn't be like you have to do this because the government is telling me this is what's best for my child. Well, you didn't give birth to that child and raise that child. Like, who are you to tell me that? I mean, that's just my personal, but I had to kind of get to that point because I was not that way because I'd been in public education, teachers, and I thought they were great. I taught in public school. I loved it.
Yeah.
But, it's just kind of shifting that mindset to where, okay, we're supposed to be, because not every public school is created equal. Not every kid is the same.
Right.
Not every family situation is the same. And so we really should it should be up to the parents because we know our kids better than the state does.
Yes.
Or a teacher does, right?
And God did not call them to raise up their child. They called the parent of the child, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So
exactly.
That's why I also love living in the state, because we're a pioneer for school choice. And that was something really important to me growing up. And I've seen the benefit of school choice like before, because I was homeschooled before we had ESA even. So now the benefits that we get through this are amazing, and I just want to increase the benefits and not roll it back. So,
well, and not everybody uses ESA. So there are a
true.
whole lot of families, and again, this is where you have. So it's both our God-given right to direct the education of our child. It's also our freedom as Americans, right, to determine what we do. But there are a lot of homeschoolers, especially traditional homeschoolers, are really leery of taking that money, understandably. Like it makes sense, right? Because anytime you're taking the government's money, you're also opening the door for them to tell you what you can and can't do.
That's true.
And so right now in Arizona, we have really great laws that they don't look over your shoulder all the time and say, okay, what are you doing? How well can they spell? Like what, testing the parent. Like there's other states where they test the parents, they make them file all kinds of stuff. We really have a very permissive education, and I work with a lot of homeschoolers, and most of them, like you do have random, but I think those kids would have issues no matter what, you know what I mean? Like
sometimes
in their family or the whatever,
Yes.
but I think for the most part, people take it very seriously. They take that education of their child seriously. You're always going to have a few that don't, no matter what the laws are, but they take it very seriously, and they don't need that government oversight because they want the best for their child. They want them to be smart, well-functioning adults. But there are a lot of people, so it's not like every homeschooler, and sometimes people are using it for private school as well, because you can use it for any kind of education or for tutors. But not everybody does use it. There are a whole lot of homeschoolers who don't want to touch that money. They just traditionally homeschool and use their own money and don't do that. So it really is a very small pocket of people.
Yes.
It's grown, but overall.
Well, because also the tax credits, because you can't use ESA and certain tax credits at the same time also. So families might be also doing one or the other, or if you don't have children, you don't use ESAs.
Right.
So can you talk about the tax credits a little bit?
Yeah, so the tax credits are different, and we also were a pioneer in that, and there's a couple of different ways that they're referred to. So like you can, as a taxpayer, you as an individual, or if you own a business, you can also do this as a business tax credit. Part of your money is going toward education anyway. So, but you can designate where that goes. So you can assign it to a certain school and say, hey, I want to help this particular Christian school or Catholic school or whatever it is, right? To be able to do better. And you can assign it to a certain school. You can assign it to a certain student and say, hey, like a lot of times people within a church, they'll get their church family to designate their tax tax dollars for that student to help them go to a Christian school, or you can assign it to an organization that does provide scholarships for students, and so then it kind of goes into a pot where there's like a Christian organization that helps students that need help get those tax credits, and so they can use that. That again is more like it's more along the lines of a voucher, because it's not a voucher, but it goes specifically to tuition. So it's not for supplies and for other things. It goes to pay tuition at a private school, and it doesn't pay the entire thing, but it pays a lot of it depending on how expensive the school is and how much you qualify to get.
Right.
But that is, you're correct in that you can't use both. If you are going to a private, so you wouldn't use tax credits if you're homeschooling. But if you're going to a Christian school or a private school, you can use either ESAs or a tax credit, but you can't use both. So they choose one or the other. And there are always people at the schools, like at a Christian school, private school, that will help you kind of sort through that. There's organizations that help sort through to figure out which is your best option. Where are you going to get the most help to decide that. But yeah, that's a totally separate thing. What's been under fire is, and I think partially because there's more parent oversight on this, that the ESAs are more under fire all the time.
Yeah. Yes.
All the time.
All the time. What do you mean they're not happy about this? No, there's lots of hostility, lots of misinformation that's spread.
Right. Well, they want you to not have a choice, have to go to public school,
right,
where they tell you to go and not have any options at all.
Right.
And be happy about it.
Yeah.
It's the whole, you'll own nothing and be happy, right? Yeah.
And we'll teach your kids everything that they need to know.
Stay out of our,
Yeah.
You don't have any say in the curriculum. Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds reasonable.
Let's talk about some of the hostility going on right now, actually, around ESAs and school choice.
Yeah.
I know I think the Navajo reservation.
Well, that was an old thing, but yeah, this is an example of hostility. Yeah.
That's one of them.
Being targeted. Yeah. So there's always something going on. And depending on when this airs too, because we pre-record some of this stuff, like maybe, but this is an older thing. This is an example of the Navajo one, that was crazy how that, God does this with me frequently, where I end up in a place or next to a person, and it's just a divine opportunity to get some information or meet a person that I'm supposed to meet. It happens to me a lot. This was one of those that it was back in 2019 that I was at the Capitol for a totally different reason. I was there to listen to some other bill. I don't even remember what it was, because I can't even remember what I was actually there for.
Yeah.
And I happened to sit in on a hearing where they were talking about this issue so this was near the early days of ESA, before it went universal, right? Because it went universal, I forget, well, no, maybe it was after. I'm trying to remember when the universal ESA, because that was the other thing that we forgot to mention in that whole progression of school choice of the ESAs, is that it was initially just for special needs students and some really low income students, and then it went to I think it was 2022 that it went to a universal model where every student was eligible to apply for ESA money. That had changed to allow everybody access to that, no matter where you were. There's certain qualifications as far as you have to have been in a public school. There's just different. I don't remember what the qualifications are, but there are certain things that you have to fill out and prove to qualify. But it opened the door to where pretty much anybody could qualify now to get ESA help. But this was back before that. So this was when you're really targeting either very low income people or special needs ESAs. And I sat in on this hearing, and they were talking about how the Kathy Hoffman, who was a Democrat superintendent of public instruction at that time, was sending threatening letters. Like, her department was sending these threatening letters to children on the Navajo reservation who had qualified for ESA money, telling them they had to pay back the money that they had taken from ESAs. And the reason was because Navajo Nation, any kind of Native American reservations, there's not a lot of options for school, right? And the school that was there was not doing well. I don't remember the whole situation with why they didn't want to go to the school that was there. If it was that it was too far, or wasn't a good school, there was something. There were some reasons. It doesn't even matter why they didn't want to go to the other school. But they had been using ESA money to go to a private Christian school that was close to their home. But because of the way the Navajo reservation is, it's its own sovereign space, right? So it doesn't really use state lines in the same way that we do in other areas, right? So the school happened to be like a mile over the Arizona border. So it was on the Navajo reservation, close to where they lived, but it was a mile over the border. And so they were like, well, this is in New Mexico, and you have to pay all this money back. And so, but where the administration before had given them permission and told them it was okay because it was close, it was within the boundaries of the Navajo reservation. It was a different situation because it's not, they don't quantify it the same thing, right? They think it's either on the reservation or it's off the reservation. So this was determining what they were going to do with that, and it led to later on in 2020 them making a Republican-sponsored bill, which ended up having bipartisan support, to fix that to where they could, if it was on a reservation, that it had like a certain 2-mile boundary, where as long as it was within a certain space, it didn't matter if it was across the state line, as long as it was, because it was looking at the reservation border versus but it's like, okay, so we're targeting going after these kids on the reservation and make them pay money back.
Right.
Which I'm not sure who decided that was a good public optic, but like as far as PR goes, not exactly a good PR move, but
not good PR.
But it was also not right. Like it was. I'm sitting there and because I had not heard the story, and I'm like, well, are you kidding me? What are they talking about? Like this was just insane.
Yeah.
And so fortunately it worked out, like they were able to get this, but this is the kind of thing that happens where it's like they'll go after certain things and they want to say like, oh, this money is going out of state. Well, it was like 5 students. It was a really small number of students, and it was a very specific thing, but you're trying to make it into a big issue.
Right.
When it's not really what they're presenting it as, right? So that was one example of that.
Okay, yeah, because I was like, one of the things that I read was that they were sending the money out of state. And it was like, well, no, but yeah.
So it sounds terrible, right? Oh, this ESA money is going out of state. Well, when you look at this specific situation, and that was back in 2019.
Right.
But this is something that goes on all the time. They take these little, things that are happening.
Yep.
Sometimes they are things that are not right. Sometimes
because
they're not. And yeah.
Well, I was like, we can talk about the one going on right now with the 400 ESA accounts.
Right. Well, this was the thing that the libs of TikTok had picked up, and that was on ABC 15 doing some kind of big investigative work. I say that very sarcastically, but trying to expose the fraud in ESAs, right? But which is, again, predictable because they don't like it and they don't want it to be a thing and they don't want to have it. And so it's like trying to find something wrong, right? Well, not to say that there's not anything going on that's not right, because I'm sure there is.
Right. Or that people don't do bad things.
Right. People are people, and in any given thing, you're going to have people who try to scam the system, right? There just are. Or people who are misinformed and don't understand what it's for, and they do stupid things, right? So there's both of those things. But again, this big investigative work, so this goes back to our truth or fiction episode where we were talking about picking out the information out of things. So I'm looking at this, right? And it was saying 400 students have their, so like let me find the article, because this was ABC 15, their big work here. But it was some kind of, there was a thing about how 400 students, I'm trying to find it on here. It was like there were 400 students who have their accounts paused right now. And so this was like the number that they lead with on the article title. But then you read in the article and it says they don't really know why these 400 students have their accounts paused. It could be for nothing. It could be like, who knows? It doesn't even explain that this was fraudulent.
Yeah.
And then it went in to say that in the last, like there are 49 students who have been asked to give money back, like in the last whatever period of time it was. So 49 students, and that it was like $180,000. If you do the math on that, it was like basically $3,000 per student out of the $6,000 roughly that they get, right? That was supposedly fraud that they had to pay back.
Right.
So I'm thinking two things when I'm reading this. One is, okay, that means that there's clearly a mechanism in there to where if somebody is committing fraud or they're doing something wrong, that there's a mechanism in there to call them out on it and say, hey, you owe the state money. You need to pay this money back. So there's a mechanism in there that's to fix that.
Tracks it somehow.
And then I'm also looking at the math going, okay, that was 49 students. Even if you look at the 400 students, right, there are 90,000 students getting ESA money. Total, right? Roughly. So 400 out of 90,000 is less than 0.5%. So it's like this big, massive fraud story. And you look at the details and it's like, okay, is it wrong for people to, I mean, and those are things, I don't know what they did. I have no idea.
Right.
There were all these things where it's like, oh, they're getting phones and they're getting different things. And some of those, like a phone, you could say it could have some educational value. Other things are like, no, but they have to, it's actually not that easy to scam the system because I briefly, like my very last child, I was briefly with ESA, just like a year. Because it was at the tail end right after that it went universal and had that. And I'm like, okay, so I have some experience knowing people who use it. You have to give a lot of documentation when you put something in. So there was something that they did recently where they were just automatically approving things that were under $1,000 or something. And then they go back and audit those to make sure that they're actually, but because what was happening was that it was taking forever for things to get approved. So you have someone who's requesting something, they can't get it approved, and then they miss their slot in a school, in a private school, or they miss a class that they were supposed to take because they didn't have the money to get it in there, or they're not getting reimbursed and then they don't have money for groceries. You know what I mean? Like whatever. There's different things where it was taking really a long time. So they try to fix that by automatically approving smaller purchases and then going back in to audit it later. Which is what they're having a fit about. It's like that these things are being automatically approved. Well, it's very clear in there. There's this big rule book that you're supposed to read and know what you're allowed to use it for, what you're not allowed to use it for, how you have to document it. I mean, people that use ESAs, right? I mean, it's kind of a pain.
Yeah. And to track it. Well, and you have to report, and any money that you use from it, you have to show all of your receipts, everything that you used it for.
Right.
So if they came and asked you or looked at your account and had to audit you, this is everything that you used the money for, which is like, I think about the same, like kind of for taxes. If you were like a business owner or something, you have to like track all of those things. Similarly, applies to the ESAs.
And so again, okay, most people are going to take that seriously.
Right.
Just like we were talking with homeschooling in general. Yep. Most people are going to take that seriously because they don't want the government coming after them. They don't want to be told that, okay, you owe the state of Arizona, several $1,000s, right?
Yes.
So most people are going to try to do the right thing and show all the receipts. And I do a lot of things with homeschoolers. I teach some classes for homeschoolers, so I hear a lot of stories of people, and then the rules change and they have to it's stressful for families, right? They're trying to figure out how to maneuver that and what the new rules are and what they have to submit, and they're not sure, and they're, all of these different things. So you're submitting all of this information. And again, most people are going to do it right. There's going to be people who either are just not paying attention and doing things that are stupid, right? Or you have people, you do have people in any situation that are going to try to get away with something, right?
Right.
But the problem is that then they're making this thing, which is really a tiny number of people, and trying to make it as a reason why we should either make it so much more complicated for people to use this money, or we should scrap the whole thing.
Right.
And because that's what they want. It's not about these fraud. It's not about the fraud things.
Yeah.
They're using it as an excuse, in my opinion, right? And just because I've seen this for so many years.
Well, and they're probably trying to find all the things wrong with it, right? If they really, truly want to shut it down, they're going to be looking.
Right.
So.
You can find things, right. Okay, so again, is any
like
of that...
49 people didn't spend the money right out of 90,000. Shut down the program. what? Bro, come on.
Right. And again, this is just this initial number. This was from this big, expose that ABC 15
using
did.
round numbers.
Right. I mean, I don't know how it's going to all play out, whatever, but they're making a big fuss over it, and they're using it as talking points because we're heading into an election.
Yes. Yes.
So it's very predictable from someone like us, right, who were watching this stuff happen all the time. But to your average person, they're like, oh my gosh, there's fraud in the ESA, and we need to really look at it and make it harder, and they shouldn't be able to take state money because there's also this narrative that it's bankrupting the state, and it's which has been proven to be false. Goldwater Institute has a great article. What was that one called?
That one was the
Did you find it?
Oh, yes, a program history, or a history of surplus savings
And media misinformation, right?
Yes.
So Goldwater Institute has an article that came out this was a year ago, but about how they because this is a continual thing, right? Trying to sound all these alarms, talk about how it's wasting all this money, it's causing the state to lose money, it's causing schools to shut down. Well, schools are shutting down because people are pulling their kids out of schools, and because the population has changed. Schools always shut down when the population shifts and fewer kids are born in a certain area and it gets older and they don't have as many kids, or a lot of that stuff is normal. But then you also did have during COVID, after COVID, you had a whole lot of people pull their kids out of public school because when it went online, this was their big, I think, we actually made a huge mistake in this whole thing.
And sending all of the kids home.
Right. I think if they had to look back on it, they would not do that way again, because that seemed to be where it just really the tide flipped, because all of a sudden kids are not in school, and so parents are realizing, hey, I can have my kids home all day, and I can, we could potentially homeschool, first of all, and second of all, they're actually hearing what is happening in school, and they're going, wait a minute, what are you reading? What are they talking about? What's happening? And why are we not allowed to go back into the classroom? When kids were not at, just all of these different things, right? So COVID opened people's eyes in a whole lot of different ways. We've talked about it quite a bit, actually, on this show, but it opened people's eyes in a lot of ways, and I think that was sort of the tide where a lot more people were pulling their kids out of public school. And then it was right after that we got the universal ESAs in Arizona, and then a bunch of other states did that too. They opened up those doors. And so you do have, I know I teach classes at a place that for homeschoolers, and we have had a surge. I mean, over the last few years, are the numbers of kids that we're seeing being pulled out of public school that are going into homeschooling or alternative types of schooling, because you have micro schools, you have online schools, you have charter schools, you have private schools, you have all kinds of different options. It feels like it's growing.
100%. Well, now I think also so many people are realizing, we don't have to follow the system, right?
Yeah.
And also I think people are seeing a result of what the system has produced, and if people did follow it, and sending their kids and all those things,
right?
Because hindsight is 2020. So.
But even with that, I was kind of surprised because I was looking at this and saying that really those numbers are still fairly small, because this is according to the internet. So, you have to take
it with a grain of salt.
We said the same thing at the same time. But according to AI, there are over 1 million students in Arizona K-12 age. Or I'm sorry, enrolled in K-12 public education. So 875,000 roughly are in district schools, and 235,000 are in charter schools, which are all considered public school. So you only have, that's a huge number. But in homeschooling, it says that according to the census, the last census, under 6% of K-12 students in Arizona were homeschooled. This was 2022-23 when it started. Those numbers started to go up.
Yeah.
There were still under 6%, and there's about 6% that go to private school. So we're talking about 10, 12% of all of the students, and we're making this huge fuss over those things. So first of all, why? When it is a small number, right? If that's only that adds up to 5%, 6%, it's 10 to 12%.
Yep.
That's not that many students overall, but it's a huge part of what they are constantly bombarding voters with, how this is ruining education. And even
ruining
students
the
who do get the ESA, those schools are still getting money even though those students are not there.
Right.
Like they're still getting some of that money. So it's not
Yes.
like the schools not getting any of the money. They're still getting some of the money, even if for bodies that aren't actually attending the school.
That's a really good point.
And so, again, you have to start to question why. Why is this such a huge, when you're talking about less than 0.5% of people that, according to the ABC article, right, about this fraud, that it's less than 0.5% of people who even supposedly are being asked to give money back.
Right.
And 10% of the students are even, and not even all, we don't even know how many of those are
Right.
using
I was
ESAs,
like, they might
right?
not even all be using ESAs.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Because we already said like 90,000 of them are using ESAs, but that's not all of them. Because I know a lot of homeschool families who don't use ESAs.
Right.
Or people going to private schools that are not using ESAs, right?
Yep.
Some of them are paying, some of them are using the tuition tax credits. And so, okay, when you hear all of this stuff, you have to start asking yourself, why is this such a push?
Yeah.
Right? It's like with any of the
And then
stories.
you just look at what time of year it is, and then
Yes.
what time of the election cycle we're in, and then you're like, oh yeah, we're a year away from having to vote a new AG in, school boards, ballot measures,
Right.
all those different things. Yeah. Do you want to
Well,
talk
and I
about
wouldn't
that
be
too?
surprised if there was a ballot measure, you know, because they tend to like push this kind of news cycle out and then try to get something, either get something passed in the state legislature or get a ballot initiative out. But like they preempt it with some big, you know, scary news story that makes people, you know, so that they can justify it, right?
Yes. Yep. I set it up.
So the I've seen too much behind the curtain. I know how this works.
Well, and if you don't have kids in school too, you don't even really know
Right.
like what's an ESA.
Well, and again,
or if you were
right.
homeschooled,
And again,
so.
you hear the news and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, fraud, that sounds terrible, which it
Right.
does, right? I'm not saying it does sound terrible.
Yeah.
And so they capitalize on this, you know, to try to make something out of something that's not really something.
Yeah.
Right. But so with that, is that what you were going to ask about the ballot initiatives? And
Yeah.
So one of the things we're leading into a state election in 2026, so we're getting close to that time. It's not, there's no president at the top of the ticket, right? So these are elections that people don't pay a lot of attention to.
Local elections.
We've been kind of sounding this drum in a lot of episodes.
I'll sound it for the rest of my life.
There we go. We'll be so week 2. No, but anyway, that we have been talking about it a lot, but I do think it is important, and because people don't pay as much attention to those midterm elections, they don't pay as much attention to all of that stuff. But it's that time of year when you may start seeing people asking you for signatures for ballot measures. My rule of thumb is always err on the side of telling them no, because getting those signatures, it's like, do we want this on the ballot? I don't want it on the ballot, right? So if there's something, unless you're really sure what it's going to do,
Right.
and what they tell you it's going to do is not always what it's going to do. We've tried to make it a little bit harder for people to lie, and we've made it harder where they used to be able to pay people per signature, where they could go out and get, you know, like you get paid per signature. So then they're faking signatures and they're having people sign, you know, Mickey Mouse and whatever, sign 3 times, and you know, like you had all that kind of
It's a
stuff
whole thing.
happening, right? Yeah. So vote for Pedro, you know, whatever. You've got all
Yeah.
these different things on there. So but we've tried to kind of minimize some of that stuff that's happening, but still they do really, it's very high pressure.
Unless you've read the fine print, don't sign it.
Yeah.
Unless you really know what they're asking
Yeah.
about, which most of the time you're not gonna know.
And because the line is, we just want to get it on the ballot. Let's just get it on the
Yeah,
ballot and let the
but-
voters decide. It's
yeah.
like, well, no, because if I don't want something terrible on the ballot that then maybe can get passed, I'd rather keep it off the ballot.
Right. Because even if people didn't vote on it, then
Right.
that could also lead
Right.
to bad things. So it's like this whole
It is a very convoluted thing, but really read it and ask. And because, I mean, I was telling you the story earlier. This was back one of the Red for Ed. Like, this has been an education battle for a very long time where they've tried to, reform funding. And it's like these two sides that kind of fight over all of these issues. But there was one of the ballot initiatives they were trying to get on that was going to significantly raise taxes. And it wasn't really going to do what they were saying it was going to do. I had read up on it. And I had a confrontation with someone in a park. And someone was trying to get me to sign it. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to sign it. And they're like, but why? And I'm like, well, because I'm explaining all of these things. I don't even remember the details of it, but I was like, it's not doing what that's what you're telling me is not what it's actually doing. Right. And this person got so upset with me and starts yelling at me, telling me that I hate chchildren. So it's like, well, you just hate children. And I'm like, yes. You know
right.
me.
All those kids in my car.
Because I think this was,
if you're on a park too.
Right.
Like, what?
So, and get really emotional and heated over it. And it had nothing to do with it had nothing to do with what they were saying.
Yeah.
But they were so convinced that this ballot initiative, so a lot of times they really believe what they're selling, like they do. They were so convinced that this was going to fix everything and make what ends up happening a lot of times, as we were saying with all the different buckets, is that you get, whether it's budget overrides or whether it's different things, that money doesn't filter down into the classroom. It gets bogged down in other places.
Yep.
And so it's, we're talking about auditing the ESA and all of that stuff. Well, we've been saying for years they really should audit public schools, different districts. I mean, it's hard because they're all different districts.
Yeah.
But, okay, where is that money going? Who's using it on what? Who's paying their brother-in-law's company to pave the parking lot? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's all kinds of different things. Because, again, in any situation, you're going to have people that try to scam the system. So I'm sure that's also happening in public schools as well.
Yep.
And those should be audited too. Like, that's taxpayer money that's going in there. It is more of a cumbersome project because you've got so many individual districts that all have their own money.
Right.
So you would have to audit each individual district. It takes more work for that. But still, like, there's always something more to what's happening than what is actually being presented to you, because they put it in this little pretty package and put a bow on it and tell you, this is very simple. There's fraud. We should get rid of it. Like,
here's a pretty bow.
Right.
Now go vote.
Yeah.
Please don't do that. Please go do your research.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Do your research and talk to people who might be using it too.
Right.
So
ask
people
questions.
in your community.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So this just, wrapping this up. So be aware of ballot initiatives.
There's school boards.
School board candidates will be on the ballot. Those are tricky because they don't have a party written down next to them. So they take a little bit more to get information on them sometimes. There are some resources. We'll share those later as well. But those when we get closer to elections, we'll share some resources where people can get information and look up candidates and things like that. State legislatures,
the AG, the governor, and the Secretary of State. Yes,
so even though there's no real big federal people on the ballot this time, we're electing a new governor, a new Secretary of State, a new Attorney General, a new the legislature gets reelected every couple of years.
Year
School
for
boards.
the state.
It is a big year for the state. Yeah. So it is really important that you dial in and pay attention to what's happening, because all of this stuff, right? So Arizona being a good place for your kids, for your grandkids, for your neighbors, your future doctors and teachers and people in your community, for their education, the more the school choice, that stuff, the pro-life laws and the education laws would be the first thing to go if they were able to flip the state level where they want it, because those are the two things that they just really hate. They hate educational freedom and ESAs, and they hate the pro-life laws. So those would be the first two things to go if they were able to get a hold of the entire state like that. So it is important that we pay attention and know who believes what and stand up for those things, because even if you don't have kids in the public school system, it still does affect you in a lot of ways
for your
and
community.
it matters. Yeah.
And your state and your country.
And just
at
for
end of
doing the
day.
right thing and protecting other people's right to use their God-given responsibility for raising their own kids and training them up
Right.
in the way that they should go, like we started.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So good. I'm going
Yeah.
to get a little drum that I can just start
Here we go,
beating, and I'm going to be
boom.
like, local election time.
So the message is local elections matter.
Yes.
And don't sign anything,
Yes.
please, unless you really, really know, and then maybe ask me.
Yeah, no, yes. Email us. Come find Debbie.
No, but
Yeah.
for real though, those things, don't sign stuff unless you really know what it is. Question news stories, question
Yep.
narratives that come your way.
Because they're trying to take it down.
They are.
So,
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you for joining us on Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church.
You can listen to this podcast on Apple and Spotify and follow us on social media to find all the info on the show notes. To learn more about Dream City Church, visit our website at dreamcitychurch.us. Thanks for listening.